After a marathon summit in Brussels, EU leaders have agreed to provide Ukraine with a massive interest-free loan to support its defense against Russia. Kyiv will get 90 billion euros to meet its military and economic needs for the next 2 years. Ukraine will only have to repay the loan if Russia pays reparations after the war. Discussions continued into the early hours after a plan to tap frozen Russian assets failed to find unanimous support. Well, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz pushed hard for accessing the frozen assets, but said the compromise still sent a clear signal to Russia's Vladimir Putin. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen also praised the deal.
We all share one clear goal: a just and lasting peace for Ukraine. That was the motto of the discussion today. So we gathered with a clear objective: to address Ukraine's pressing financing needs for the next 2 years. And I'm very pleased to say we made it. We have secured an agreement that we can deliver on the financing needs for Ukraine for the next 2 years.
Well, DW correspondent Jack Perrick was in Brussels following those talks through the night. We asked him if some EU members would balk at the size of this loan deal.
Well, not only bulk, but 3 of them have already said that they will opt out immediately from it. And that's Hungary, Czechia and Slovakia. Those leaders do not want to be involved in this. But we understand this is why they managed, actually, after these really long discussions, the discussions on getting this loan in this sense were actually quite quick, because those 3 countries that are totally opposed to raising collective debt in that way, they could opt out of it, and that's what's happened. There are many countries that are still not massively comfortable with it, but because they did it in the pandemic, it was easier to get over the line during this summit. And that's the way that Ukraine's going to be funded from an EU perspective, because, as Bart de Wever said, chartered waters, they know what happens when they raise debt in this way.
Well, as we mentioned earlier, the EU has agreed to provide Ukraine with a 90 billion euro loan. For more on that, we can speak now with Pascal Campreux, spokesperson for the French Foreign Ministry. Welcome to the program. First of all, what's your take on that massive EU loan for Ukraine? Is it a good thing?
It's a clear signal for Russia that there is no fatigue in the EU support to Ukraine. And it's a clear signal to Ukraine that we will support them in the long term against the Russian aggression. So it's a very good decision that will help Ukrainians in these peace talks in which they are entering.
When you say a good sign that we support Ukraine, you're not speaking about the entire EU, because Hungary, Slovakia, and the Czech Republic opted out of this loan for Ukraine. What does that tell us about EU backing for Ukraine?
Well, this is the EU, so you have a very different points of view within the EU. What is important is the impact and the results. And this impact and this result is very clear. You have tonight the leaders who decided to grant 90 billion euros for Ukraine. So it gives visibility in this terrible fight that the Ukrainians are waging now.
And how effective do you think that 90 billion euros will be used by Ukraine in its efforts to maintain the country's sovereignty in its war against Russia?
Well, it is. It's not a blank check, of course. You know, our common position is that we are very attentive to what to the use of these funds. So, of course, we strongly support European preference. We strongly support efforts in the fight against corruption in Ukraine as well. So these are all conditions that will be very clearly sought after.
Now, France was in favor of using frozen Russian assets to help fund Ukraine. Has your government, that didn't work out, has your government given up on it now?
We were open to different solutions To be honest, there were different solutions made and put on the table by the Commission. We were neutral in this way. Frozen asset was a good option as well. You had, as you know, a very strong opposition by Belgium on that, and you had also this possibility of a loan to Ukraine. Once again, what's important is in the impact. There's also another thing that we took in last week, in the end of the last week, was that we are completely freezing the Russian assets in Europe until the end of the war. So which means that these Russian assets won't move from Ukraine and from Europe until the end of the war.
Remind us again why it's been so difficult for the EU to find common ground on actually tapping those Russian foreign frozen assets inside Europe.
It is a very complex legal issue, actually, because you need not to illegally seize these assets. So there could be a fine line there that both technically and politically, but you had different positions, and so that's where we are now. In the end, we think that in the end of the war, it will be for Russia and Russian assets to pay for the reconstruction of Ukraine. So we will see what we will collectively do with the frozen assets that are now in Europe in the end of the Russian aggression of Ukraine.
Finally, I just wanted to ask you one question about the EU postponing a decision on a free trade deal with Mercosur countries in South America. That's just been decided. France played a role in that decision. French President Macron, he said that the agreement was not acceptable to France in its current state. Can you tell us why and whether France will continue to oppose the agreement moving forward?
France is a big agriculture nation, and it's extremely important, but for French citizens, but for European citizens, to be very clear on what we sign. So we have made 3 very transparent conditions, which is to be some safeguards that are now been on the table with the European Parliament that was voted in the beginning of the week, but also some discussions on mirrors clause. That means that the thing that we impose to our agriculture in Europe is not allowed to Mercosur agricultures that can then ship their products to Europe, so with different conditions. And third, which is to have very strict controls in terms of sanitary conditions, for instance. So these 3 things are now well taken into account by the Commission, by our other EU member states. And now what we say is that we need to see the text. We need to see what will really be implemented. So that's where we are now. It was too early to decide.
Pascal Canfrareux, the spokesperson for the French Foreign Ministry. Thank you very much for talking with us.
Thank you.